When Michael Jordan returned to Charlotte, he expected a quiet trip filled with memories and a few business meetings. What he did not expect was for a simple act of kindness from a young hotel employee to set off a chain reaction that would lead to the young man losing his job. The discovery that his presence had inadvertently caused someone harm shocked the basketball icon. While most people in his position might have felt a brief moment of guilt, perhaps sent a signed jersey as an apology, and moved on, Michael Jordan's response to learning of the young man's firing would ignite a series of events that nobody could have predicted. What began as a routine hotel stay would transform not just the life of the young man Shijo and his family, but Michael himself, and ultimately it would send a powerful message to an entire corporation. The question was not whether the famous man would try to make things right. It was how far he would go to correct a wrong that was done in his name and to reward the integrity of a young man who chose to help a stranger at great personal cost. No one, not even Shijo himself, could have possibly imagined what was about to happen next. The sleek black car slid silently to the curb in front of the Grand Lux Hotel, a beacon of modern luxury in a city that had grown and changed so much since he was a boy. Michael Jordan sat in the back seat for a moment, the tinted windows hiding him from the world. He watched the bellhops in their crisp uniforms moving with practiced efficiency. "You sure you don't want to use the private entrance?" his driver asked through the intercom. Michael shook his head. "Sometimes you have to walk through the front door to remember what it's like." He stepped out of the car, a towering figure, even without the iconic shoes that had made him a global name. He adjusted the simple baseball cap on his head, pulling it low over his eyes, and hoped for a few moments of anonymity before he was inevitably recognized. He was just a man visiting his hometown, a man wanting to reconnect with his roots, not the larger-than-life figure people saw on television screens and magazine covers. The hotel lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass. A huge crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, sparkling like 1,000 tiny stars. A quiet piano melody drifted from a lounge somewhere to his left. People moved through the space with a hushed reverence, their expensive clothes whispering against the polished floors. A young man in a bellhop uniform approached him. His name tag read Shijo. "Welcome to the Grand Lux, sir. May I help you with your bags?" Shijo asked, his voice polite and steady. He was young, maybe 19, with bright, intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than most. Michael smiled. It was a small, genuine smile that rarely made it past the cameras. "Just one bag," he said, pointing to the simple duffel bag at his feet. Shijo nodded and took the bag. His movements were smooth and confident. He did not stare or show any sign of recognition, which Michael appreciated. Maybe this trip could be quiet. After they were halfway across the lobby, when the first person noticed him, a man in a business suit stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. "Oh my goodness," he whispered to his companion, "that's Michael Jordan." The whisper was like a single spark in a dry forest. Within seconds, heads turned, phones were lifted from pockets, and a low murmur grew into a wave of excited chatter. Michael sighed inwardly. His quiet arrival was officially over. He tried to continue walking toward the check-in desk, but people began to close in, holding out phones for pictures, napkins for autographs, their faces a mix of awe and excitement. Shijo, who was walking just ahead of him, saw what was happening. He saw Michael's smile tighten, the way his shoulders tensed up. He saw the polite mask of a celebrity, trying to be gracious while feeling trapped. The crowd was getting thicker now, pressing in from all sides, making it impossible to move forward. The hotel security was slow to react, unprepared for such a sudden commotion. Shijo made a split-second decision. He leaned in close to Michael and spoke in a low voice. "Sir, there's a service corridor just through that door." He pointed to an unmarked wooden door behind a large potted plant. "I can get you to a service elevator away from the crowd." Michael looked at the young bellhop, surprised by his quick thinking and his calm demeanor. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of relief. "Lead the way." Shijo nodded and turned to the crowd. "Excuse me, please," he said, his voice cutting through the noise with surprising authority. "We need to get through." He did not shout, but there was a firmness in his tone that made people hesitate. He gently created a small path and guided Michael toward the service door. Just as they reached it, a stern-looking man in an expensive suit intercepting them. His name tag identified him as Mr. Henderson, the hotel manager. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his eyes fixed on Shujo. "Mr. Henderson, this guest was being overwhelmed by the crowd. I was taking him to a service elevator for his safety and comfort." Shujo explained calmly, "Your job is to take his bags to the front desk, not to lead guests through employee-only areas." Mr. Henderson snapped, his face red with anger. Michael stepped forward. "It was my request. I appreciate the young man's help." The manager barely glanced at him. His focus remained on Shujo. "This is a 5-star hotel, not a chaotic stadium. We have protocols. You have violated those protocols." The crowd was still buzzing behind them, taking pictures of the confrontation. Michael felt a growing sense of unease. He had caused this problem for the young man who was only trying to help. "I'll take full responsibility," he started to say, but Mr. Henderson cut him off. "That won't be necessary. I will handle my staff." He turned back to Shujo. "Your services are no longer required at the Grand Lux. Clean out your locker." The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. Shujo's face went pale. He looked from the manager to Michael, his expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He simply nodded, once turned and walked away, disappearing through the same service door he had offered as an escape. Michael Jordan stood there, stunned. He watched Shujo go, then turned to the manager. "That was completely unnecessary. The young man was doing the right thing. Our protocols are in place for a reason." Mr. Henderson said, his tone final. "Now if you'll follow me, I'll escort you to the presidential suite myself." Michael said nothing. He followed the manager through the now parting crowd, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the image of the young man's face, the look of quiet dignity, even as he was being fired in front of a crowd of strangers. The luxurious suite with its panoramic city views felt cold and empty. He had come back to his hometown to feel grounded, to remember where he came from. But in the span of 10 minutes, he had watched a hard-working young man lose his job, simply for trying to help him. A sense of injustice settled heavily in his chest. This was not right, and he knew right then that he couldn't just let it go. He walked to the window and looked down at the city lights far below. He didn't know the young man's name yet, but he was determined to find him. He had to make this right, because some things were more important than fame or fortune, and a good deed should never be punished. The weight of the moment in the lobby pressed down on Michael Jordan long after the hotel manager had finished his overly polite tour of the presidential suite. The space was magnificent, a sprawling testament to wealth and status, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the Charlotte skyline. Michael saw none of it. His mind was still downstairs in that marble-flooded lobby, replaying the cold dismissal of the young bellhop. The manager, Mr. Henderson, had spoken of protocols and rules, but Michael saw it for what it was, a manager flexing his power, a man more concerned with the appearance of order than with the genuine comfort and safety of a guest or the well-being of his own employee. He paced the length of the enormous living room, the silence of the suite amplifying the turmoil in his thoughts. He thought back to his own youth, to the times when a single opportunity or a single closed door could have changed everything. He remembered the sting of being cut from his high school varsity team, a moment of public failure that had fueled a private fire within him. What if someone had punished a janitor for letting him stay late to practice in the gym? What if a coach had refused to see his potential because he didn't fit a certain mold? He knew firsthand how much small acts of kindness and belief mattered, especially when you were young and fighting for a foothold in the world. This young man Shijo had shown more poise and quick thinking under pressure than the manager who had fired him. He hadn't asked for a photo or an autograph. He hadn't fawned over Michael's celebrity. He had seen a problem, a person in a difficult situation, and he had offered a solution quietly and efficiently. It was the kind of heads-up play Michael had valued in teammates his entire career, an instinctive understanding of the situation and a willingness to do what was necessary to help the
team. In this case, the team was just a guest trying to get to his room.
The injustice of it all gnawed at him. A kid loses his job for doing the right thing, for showing compassion and initiative. A kid who was probably working hard just to make ends meet. The manager's rigid adherence to protocol was a mask for poor leadership. Michael had seen it 1,000 times in business and in sports. People who hid behind rule books because they lacked the judgment or the courage to make a real decision. Walked over to the ridiculously oversized bar and poured himself a glass of water. Ignoring the rows of expensive liquors, he felt a deep sense of responsibility. He was the reason Shijo had been put in that position. His fame was the storm the young man had tried to navigate. It wasn't enough to feel sorry for the kid. He had to do something concrete, something that would not only fix the immediate damage, but would also honor the boy's character. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. It was his longtime personal assistant, Sarah, a woman who was more of a trusted partner than an employee. Her efficiency and discretion were legendary. Sarah, he said, his voice low and tight with an anger he rarely showed. "I need you to find someone for me." He explained the situation in the lobby. The young bellhop, the firing his name tag said, "Shijo." "I don't have a last name, but he was working the main entrance around 3 p.m. today. He's young, black, maybe 19 years old. Find him for me. I need everything you can get: his full name, his home address, his family situation. I need to know what this job meant to him." Sarah didn't ask why. She knew from the tone of his voice that this was not a casual request, it was a priority. "I'm on it, Michael," she replied. "I should have something for you within the hour." He hung up the phone and walked back to the window, looking down at the city below. He felt a sense of alienation from the world of luxury that surrounded him. The five-star hotels, the private jets, the endless stream of people who wanted something from him. It all felt hollow at that moment. What felt real was the memory of Shijo's shocked but dignified face as he accepted his fate without a word of protest. That was character, that was strength, and Michael Jordan knew that character was something you had to reward. He made another decision right then and there. He wouldn't spend another minute in this hotel. He couldn't sleep in a bed provided by a company that treated its employees with such callous disregard. He called Sarah back. "Sarah, cancel my reservations here for the entire week. I'm checking out now. Find me a secure private rental somewhere quiet, and tell the hotel I will be sending a formal letter explaining my dissatisfaction. I'll also be speaking with David in the morning about our corporate account with this chain nationwide." He didn't need to say more. Sarah understood the implications. The loss of his personal stay was a message. The loss of his company's multi-million-dollar account would be a thunderclap that would be heard all the way up to the CEO's office. He walked over to his simple duffel bag, the one Shijo had been carrying when the whole mess started, and zipped it shut. He didn't bother to unpack. He felt like a stranger in this suite, a place that represented a set of values he couldn't abide by. He thought about the manager, Mr. Henderson, a man who had chosen power over people, protocol over principle. He knew that men like Henderson often rose to positions of authority, but they were never true leaders, empowered their people. They didn't break them down over minor infractions. Michael slung the duffel bag over his shoulder and walked toward the door of the suite. He didn't use the main elevator. He found the service elevator that Shijo had pointed him toward and rode it down to the ground floor alone. He walked out a side exit into the late afternoon sun, feeling a sense of release. As his driver pulled the car around, he took one last look at the gleaming facade of the Grand Lux Hotel. They had built a beautiful building, he thought, but they had forgotten to give it a soul, and he was about to give them a very expensive lesson on the importance of integrity. He was no longer just a guest. He was a man on a mission to find a young bellhop named Shijo and make sure that his good deed did not go unpunished, but was instead rewarded in a way that would change his life forever. Michael sat in the back of the car as it moved through the Charlotte traffic, leaving the gleaming towers of the city's financial district behind him. The silence in the car was heavy, broken only by the quiet hum of the engine. He felt a restless energy, a familiar feeling that always came before a big game, the sense that a challenge had been presented and he needed to meet it head-on. This challenge, however, wasn't on a basketball court, and the opponent wasn't another team. It was a form of casual injustice that he found deeply offensive. The world was full of people like Mr. Henderson, people who clung to small bits of power and used it to diminish others. And the world was also full of people like Shijo, hard-working, decent individuals who were often the victims of that kind of petty tyranny. He remembered his father, a man who had worked with his hands his entire life and who had taught him the value of a day's work and the importance of personal pride. His father would have been disgusted by what he had witnessed in the hotel lobby. He would have seen it as an insult, not just to the young man, but to the very idea of honest labor. His phone buzzed, bringing him out of his thoughts. It was Sarah. "I have the information you wanted," she said. Her voice was calm and professional as always, but he could detect a note of sympathy. The young man's name is Shijo Washington. He is 19 years old. He's been working full-time at the hotel for just over a year, saving every penny he could for college. He lives with his mother, Eleanor Washington, and his 12-year-old sister, Maya, on the east side of town. Michael listened intently, every detail, painting a clearer picture of the life he had just disrupted. The east side, he knew that area well. It was a world away from the luxury of the grander Lux, a neighborhood of hard-working families where money was tight and opportunities were scarce. Sarah continued, her voice softening slightly. "There's more. Michael, Eleanor, his mother has been unable to work for the last 6 months. She was diagnosed with a severe form of rheumatoid arthritis. It's a chronic condition that has made it impossible for her to continue her job as a home health aide. The medical bills are piling up. Shijo is the sole provider for the family." The words landed with the force of a physical blow. Michael closed his eyes, a wave of guilt washing over him. This wasn't just about a kid losing a part-time job. This was about a family losing its only lifeline. The manager hadn't just fired a bellhop, he had potentially pushed a family to the brink of disaster. The weight of his responsibility felt immense. He had seen the quiet strength in Shijo's eyes, but now he understood the source of that strength. It was the resilience of a young man forced to become the head of his household far too soon, a young man carrying the burden of his mother's health and his sister's future on his 19-year-old shoulders. "Do you have an address?" Michael asked, his voice now quiet and heavy. Sarah read out an address, a street he vaguely recognized from his youth, a place of small, modest homes and tight-knit communities. "Thank you, Sarah," he said. "One more thing, I want you to reach out to the chief of medicine at Novant Health. I sit on their foundation's board. Tell them I am sending a patient their way. Eleanor Washington. I want her to have a full workup by the best rheumatology team in the state. I don't care what it costs, my foundation will cover everything. Schedule it for as soon as possible." "I understand, Michael. Is there anything else?" Sarah asked. "Just one more thing," he said. "I want you to look into the work-study program at Shijo's high school. Find out how he got the job at the hotel. I want to understand the system that put him there." He ended the call and leaned his head back against the leather seat. The plan was beginning to form in his mind. It was no longer enough to just find Shijo and offer him some money. That would be a temporary fix, a bandage on a much deeper wound. He needed to provide a real solution, something that would give the family lasting security and create a genuine opportunity for Shijo. He had to do more than just right the wrong. He had to turn this crisis into a turning point for the Washington family. His driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Where to now, Mr. Jordan?" he asked. Michael gave him the address Sarah had provided. "Let's go for a drive," he said. He needed to see the neighborhood where Shijo lived to understand the world the young man came from. He needed to ground himself in the reality of the situation before he acted. He knew what people would expect him to do if this story ever got out. Maybe make a public statement or a large donation. But Michael Jordan had built his career and his life on personal action, not empty gestures. He wasn't going to send a check or an assistant. He was going to go himself. He was going to knock on that door and look Shijo Washington in the eye. He was going to show this young man that his act of character had been seen, and that it would be honored in a way that truly mattered. As the car moved from the manicured lawns of the city's wealthier districts to the more modest and lived-in streets of the East Side, Michael felt a sense of purpose solidifying within him. He had spent decades building an empire, a global brand, a legend. But at the end of the day, He was still James Jordan's son, a kid from North Carolina who understood that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the strength of your character and the positive impact you had on the people around you. He was about to make the most important investment of his week, and it had nothing to do with stocks or real estate. It was an investment in a young man's future. The drive across Charlotte was a journey through Michael's own history. The further the car moved from the gleaming glass and steel of the downtown core, the more the city began to resemble the one he remembered from his youth. The neighborhoods became a patchwork of brick houses and small apartment buildings, tidy lawns and chain-link fences. This was the Charlotte that had built him the city of community centers and public parks, of hard-working people who knew their neighbors and looked out for each other. It was a world away from the rarefied air of the presidential suite, a world that felt more real, more honest. The car turned onto the street Sarah had named. It was a quiet block lined with trees that were just beginning to show their autumn colors. Children's bicycles lay on front lawns, and the smell of someone grilling dinner hung in the air. It was a neighborhood of families, a place of quiet striving. The apartment complex was a modest two-story brick building, its facade clean but showing the wear of countless seasons. It was not a place of luxury, but it had an air of dignity and resilience. Michael asked his driver to park a little way down the street and wait. He got out of the car feeling the familiar humidity of a Carolina evening on his skin. He had changed out of his expensive travel clothes at a secure location Sarah had arranged for him, now wearing simple jeans, a plain black t-shirt and a baseball cap pulled low. He wanted to arrive not as Michael Jordan, the global icon, but as a man who had come to offer an apology and a helping hand. He walked down the quiet sidewalk, his famous height, making him conspicuous even in his simple attire. He found the apartment number painted neatly on a green door and stood before it for a long
moment. He could hear the faint murmur of a television and the sound of a young girl's laughter from inside. He thought about the family on the other side of that door. A mother in pain, a young man facing unemployment, a little girl unaware of the storm that had just hit their lives. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. He felt the same nervous energy he used to feel in the tunnel before a championship game. The anticipation of a pivotal moment. This was not a game, but the stakes felt just as high. Family's future hung in the balance. He raised his hand and knocked firmly on the door. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet hallway. The laughter inside stopped. The television was muted. He waited, hearing hushed whispers from within. The door opened a few inches, and a young girl with wide, curious eyes peered out through the crack. She looked to be about 12, her hair in two neat braids, her face a perfect blend of innocence and intelligence. She was clearly Shijo's sister. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice soft but not timid. Michael offered her a gentle smile, one that he hoped would put her at ease. "I'm here to see Shijo," he said. "Is he home?" The girl's eyes widened as she processed his face, then widened further in disbelief. Her mouth fell open in a silent gasp
of recognition. She didn't scream or shout. She was too stunned for that. She simply vanished from the doorway, pulling it shut for a second before he heard her voice, a high-pitched, excited whisper from inside. "Shijo, you have to come to the door right now. Someone's here to see you, and you are not going to believe who it is." A moment later, the door swung open again. This time Shijo stood there, his face a mask of confusion that quickly melted into pure astonishment. He was wearing a faded t-shirt and sweatpants, and his eyes were red-rimmed as if he had been trying to figure out how to break the bad news to his family. He stared at Michael, as if seeing a ghost. "Sir," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" The shock in the young man's eyes was profound, and Michael felt another pang of guilt. "I came to talk to you, Shijo," he said, his voice calm and even. "May I come in?" For a moment Shijo seemed incapable of movement. He was frozen in the doorway, his mind trying to reconcile the impossible reality of Michael Jordan standing on his doorstep. Then some instinct of courtesy kicked in, and he quickly stepped back, clearing the way, of course. "Yes, please, come in." Michael stepped across the threshold and into the Washington family's life. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished, but it was spotlessly clean and filled with a sense of warmth that no luxury hotel could ever replicate. The air smelled of freshly laundered clothes and something savory cooking on the stove. The walls were adorned with framed school pictures and handmade drawings, testament to a home built on love and pride. A woman sat on a simple sofa, a colorful handmade quilt spread over her legs. She was thin and her face was etched with lines of chronic pain, but her eyes held a fierce intelligence and an undeniable strength. This had to be Eleanor Washington, the matriarch of this resilient family. Shijo, still looking dazed, made the introductions. "Mom, this is he," hesitated for a second, unsure of the protocol. "Mr. Jordan." Eleanor Washington's eyes widens slightly, but she showed no sign of being starstruck. Instead, she offered Michael a tired but gracious smile, a smile that held no hint of blame or resentment. "It's an honor to meet you, ma'am," Michael said, addressing her directly and bypassing the stunned Shijo. "I am so very sorry to intrude on your family like this." Eleanor gestured to a worn but comfortable-looking armchair across from the sofa. "It's no intrusion at all," she said, her voice soft but steady, "though I must admit I'm a little surprised to see you in my living room. Please sit down." Michael took the offered seat, feeling the weight of the moment settle over the small room. The little girl Maya now stood half-hidden behind her brother, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. This was a family in crisis, and he was the cause of it all. He looked directly at Shijo, who was still standing awkwardly in the middle of the room. "Shijo, I came here tonight for one primary reason," he began, his tone direct and sincere. "I came here to apologize. What happened at the hotel today was completely my fault. I created the situation and you were punished for trying to help me. I am truly and deeply sorry that you lost your job because of me." The apology hung in the air, genuine and unequivocal. Shijo finally seemed to find his voice, shaking his head as if to clear it. "It wasn't your fault, sir," he said earnestly. "You didn't do anything wrong. I knew the rules about the service areas. I made a choice. I saw that you were uncomfortable, and I was just trying to help you, and I appreciate that more than you know," Michael said, leaning forward. "You showed incredible character, and you were punished for it. That's not right. That should never be the outcome when someone does the right thing." He glanced from Shijo to his mother, whose gaze was steady and unwavering. "The hotel manager told me after he fired you that you were the sole provider for your family. I can only imagine the stress this has put on all of you." Eleanor reached out and took her son's hand, pulling him down to sit beside her on the sofa. She held his hand tightly, a silent gesture of support and love. "We'll manage," she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination that Michael recognized immediately. It was the same determination that had driven him throughout his own life. "Shijo is a strong young man," she continued, "and we are a strong family. We've faced tough times before. We'll figure something out." The simple, unwavering dignity of this family in the face of such a devastating "What show-off dime, Dauha, Ue Kaken, Redcon Fulong Biken, Puddy Half Sara Mogov Timol, Dauf Losing to Messing a Fulltukanst. Blow was profoundly moving. They had every right to be angry with him, to blame him for their misfortune, but instead they presented a united front of grace and resilience. They were not asking for a handout, they were simply stating their intention to endure. This quiet strength only deepened Michael's resolve. He knew that his first instincts had been correct. A simple check would be an insult to their pride. What they needed was not charity, but a real opportunity, a ladder out of their current circumstances. "I know you'll manage," he said, his voice filled with respect, "but you shouldn't have to." He looked at Shijo, his expression now shifting from apologetic to purposeful. "Shijo, I came here for another reason besides apologizing. I want to offer you a job." The room fell silent again, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Shijo stared at him, his mouth slightly agape. "A job," he repeated the words as if they were from a foreign language, doing what Michael allowed a small smile to touch his lips. "It's not a job at a hotel. It's with me," he said. "My organization is always looking for smart, resourceful people who can think on their feet and who have a deep sense of integrity, people exactly like you. I would like to offer you a position on my personal staff, starting as a paid intern. You would learn about business management, logistics, event planning, public relations, everything that goes into running a global brand and a philanthropic foundation. It would be a full-time paid position, of course, with a salary that is significantly higher than what you were making at the hotel. It would come with full benefits for you and your family. Shijo was utterly speechless. He looked at his mother, whose eyes had filled with tears. He looked at his little sister, who was now staring at him with undisguised hero worship. He looked back at Michael Jordan, the man who had inadvertently cost him his job and was now offering him the dream of a lifetime, a job with you. He finally managed to say, his voice cracking with emotion, I don't know what to say. The weight of the offer was immense. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline, a completely different future, a path out of the constant worry that had been his life for the past year. He had been saving for community college, hoping to take a few business classes. Now one of the most successful businessmen in the world was offering to mentor him personally, yet a flicker of doubt, a lifetime of being told he was just a kid from the East Side, made him hesitate. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm just a kid who carried your bag for 2 minutes." Michael leaned forward again, his gaze intense and unwavering. "You are so much more than that, Shijo," he said, his tone becoming serious and powerful. "You are a young man who saw a person in a difficult situation, and you made an instant decision to help, without any thought for yourself or the risk involved. You didn't do it because you recognized me and wanted something. You did it because it was the right thing to do. That kind of character, that kind of integrity is rare, and it's more valuable than any college degree or any resume I can teach you the details of business, Shijo. But you already possess the one thing I can't teach anyone: character." He then turned his attention to Eleanor. "And I understand you've been dealing with some significant health challenges," he said gently. Her eyes welled up again, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. "It's been difficult," she admitted, her voice thick with unshed emotion. "That's the other reason I'm here," Michael continued. "Part of my organization includes a charitable foundation that connects people with the best medical care available, regardless of their ability to pay. I've taken the liberty of having my assistant schedule a full consultation for you with a team of the top rheumatology specialists in the state for next week. My foundation will cover all of the costs of your treatment, whatever that may be, for as long as you need it." Now both mother and son were crying openly, silent tears of relief and overwhelming gratitude. The immense weight of months of pain and financial worry seemed to be physically lifting from their shoulders right there in their small living room. The tension that had held Eleanor's body so rigidly seemed to soften, and the look of exhaustion in Shijo's eyes was replaced with a dawning light of hope. Shijo finally found his voice rising from the depths of his shock and emotion. "I accept," he said, his voice strong despite the tears. "Thank you, sir. Thank you for
everything."
Michael stood up, feeling the emotional charge in the room. "Please," he said, his voice warm, "call me Michael." He reached out and shook Shijo's hand, a firm, solid grip that sealed the promise of a new beginning. Then he bent down and gently took Eleanor's hand in both of his. "It was my honor to meet both of you," he said quietly. "My assistant Sarah will be in contact with you first thing in the morning to go over all the details for your medical appointments and for Shijo's new position." As he walked out of the apartment and back into the quiet evening air, he felt a sense of profound peace that the opulent hotel suite could never have provided. He hadn't just righted a wrong, he had done something far more important. He had invested in a family's future. He had turned a moment of corporate callousness into an opportunity for growth, hope and healing. He got back into his car, and as his driver pulled away, he glanced back at the small apartment window, where a light now burned brightly, a beacon of a new day that was dawning for the Washington family. He knew his work in his hometown was far from finished. This single act of intervention was just the beginning of a new chapter for Shijo and his family, and in a surprising way for him as well. He had been powerfully reminded that the greatest assists and the most meaningful victories often happen far away from the cheering crowds, when no one is watching at all. The next morning, the sun streamed through the window of the Washington family's apartment, feeling warmer and more hopeful than it had in months. Eleanor was already awake, a small, peaceful smile on her face. For the first time since her diagnosis, she had slept through the night, not kept awake by the twin burdens of physical pain and financial worry. Shijo was in the kitchen making pancakes for his little sister Maya, who was buzzing with an energy that filled the small apartment with life. "Did Michael Jordan really come to our house?" Maya asked for what felt like the 10th time, her eyes wide with the wonder of it all. "Yes, he did," Shijo confirmed, flipping a pancake with a newfound sense of confidence that seemed to add inches to his height. "And he's going to help Mom get better." Maya's face lit up with pure joy. "And he gave you a job, a super cool job, right?" Shijo laughed, a genuine happy sound that had been rare in their home recently. "It's a real job, Maya, an internship, but yes, it's very, very cool." The entire atmosphere in the apartment was transformed from one of quiet, anxious survival to one of buzzing excitement and possibility. The heavy weight of uncertainty had been lifted, replaced by the light of a tangible future. The phone rang just as Sarah had promised, and Shijo answered it. His conversation with Michael Jordan's assistant was a whirlwind of life-changing information. She was warm, efficient, and incredibly kind, explaining the details of his new position with a clarity that made it all feel real. He was to start the following Monday. His salary would be more than double what he had earned at the hotel, a figure that made Shijo's head spin, and it would include a comprehensive health benefits package for his entire family. Shijo scribbled down notes on a napkin, the only paper he could find, his hand shaking slightly, not with fear, but with sheer excitement. After finalizing the details of his employment, Sarah asked to speak with his mother, and for the next 20 minutes she gently and respectfully walked Eleanor through the arrangements for her upcoming medical consultation. She explained who the doctors were, what to expect, and assured her that every single detail from transportation to prescriptions would be handled discreetly and compassionately. When Eleanor hung up the phone, she was weeping again, but these were not the silent tears of pain she had grown so accustomed to shedding. These were tears of profound joy and overwhelming relief. "They're taking care of everything. Shijo," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Every single thing." Meanwhile, across town, in a temporary office suite he had secured, Michael Jordan was having a very different kind of morning conversation. He was seated at a large conference table with his top business manager, a sharp, strategic man named David, and two of his most trusted corporate lawyers. The topic on the table was his organization's long-standing and very lucrative corporate partnership with the Grand Lux hotel chain. For over a decade, his companies had exclusively used their hotels for executive travel, corporate retreats, and major events, a contract that was worth tens of millions of dollars annually. "I want to terminate the agreement immediately," he said. His tone was quiet but carried an unmistakable weight of finality, leaving no room for negotiation or debate. David, his business manager, looked up from the financial report spread before him, a frown creasing his brow. "Terminate it, Michael?" he asked, the question laced with surprise and concern. "That's a significant move. It will have major financial and logistical implications for our travel departments." "I'm fully aware of that," David Michael replied, his gaze steady. "But this isn't a financial decision. It's a decision based on principle and values." He then proceeded to recount the entire story of what had happened to Shijo Washington. He described the young man's quick thinking and professionalism, the manager's callous and demeaning behavior, and the devastating impact the firing had on Shijo and his family. "My brand, my name, everything I have built is founded on the ideals of excellence, teamwork, and integrity." He continued, his voice rising with controlled passion. "I cannot and will not have my companies associated with an organization that fires a 19-year-old kid for showing compassion and initiative. Their actions do not align with our core values, and I refuse to support them with another dollar of our business." The legal team, after a moment of consideration, confirmed that they had grounds to terminate the contract for cause, citing the incident as a clear reputational risk to Michael's brand. David, however, still looked concerned. "The hotel chain will fight this, Michael. They'll claim it's a massive overreaction to a minor internal staffing issue. They'll try to spin it in the media. Let them fight it," Michael said calmly, his decision unshakable. "But I want to do more than just pull our business. I want them to understand exactly why this is happening." He instructed his team to draft a formal and detailed letter to the CEO of the hotel's parent corporation. The letter would not be a standard legal notice. It would be a personal and powerful statement. It would detail the incident in the lobby and explicitly state that the termination of their multi-million-dollar contract was a direct and unequivocal result of the unjust firing of a single bellhop named Shijo Washington. It would also contain a strong recommendation that the company conduct a top-to-bottom review of its management training and corporate policies to prioritize customer safety and employee empowerment over the blind enforcement of rigid and often counterproductive protocols. The message had to be crystal clear. People are always more important than protocols, and integrity is not a minor staffing issue. The meeting concluded, and the powerful wheels of Michael's corporate machine were set in motion. The letter was drafted on his personal letterhead and sent via special courier directly to the corporate headquarters of the hotel chain. News of the contract termination would undoubtedly send shockwaves through their executive offices and their stock price, but Michael Jordan wasn't finished yet. He then picked up his phone and made another call, this time to Dr. Evans, the principal of the local public high school that Shijo had recently graduated from. He learned that Shijo had been an excellent student, a quiet leader who often stayed after school to volunteer as a tutor for younger kids. He had been part of a special work-study program that placed promising students from low-income families in professional environments like the hotel, a program designed to be a bridge to a better future. The principal lamented that Shijo's unfair firing would be a huge blow to the program's reputation and could discourage other businesses from participating. Michael listened patiently, then he made another life-changing offer. "I would like to establish a new permanent scholarship fund at your school," he said. "It will be called the Washington Integrity Scholarship in honor of Shijo Washington. It will be awarded each year to a graduating senior from a similar background who has demonstrated exceptional character, a strong work ethic, and a commitment to helping others, even when it's not the easy thing to do. The scholarship," he continued, "will cover the full cost of tuition, room and board at any state university in North Carolina for 4 years." The principal was left utterly speechless. He sat in his modest office, his mind reeling from the magnitude of the donation. This was a game-changing gift for his school and for generations of its students by the end of the day. Michael Jordan had not only secured a new and promising future for Shijo and his family, he had sent a powerful and undeniable message to a major corporation and created a lasting legacy of opportunity at a local school. He hadn't just solved a single problem, he had created a ripple effect of positive change that would extend far beyond one family's small apartment on the east side. He sat in his temporary office, a much simpler and more functional space than the hotel suite he had abandoned, and looked out the window as the sun began to set. He thought about Shijo starting his new life full of hope and potential. He thought about Eleanor finally getting the world-class care she deserved. He thought about future students who would be inspired by Shijo's story and be rewarded not just for their grades but for their good character. He felt a deep and profound satisfaction that was more fulfilling than any championship trophy or lucrative endorsement deal. He had used his immense power not just to entertain or to sell products, but to build something meaningful, to lift people up, to reward goodness in a world that so often overlooks it. He knew the news of his actions would eventually become public, but that wasn't the point. The real point was that a good deed had been done, a wrong had been righted, and a young man's life was forever changed for the better. And for Michael Jordan, that was a victory worth more than any score on a scoreboard or any number in a bank account. It was a win for the human spirit. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp, clear dawn that promises new beginnings for Shijo Washington. It felt like the first day of a completely new life. He stood in front of his small closet, his hand bypassing the worn-out bellhop uniform that still hung there, a relic of a former life. Instead, he looked at the new set of business casual clothes that Michael Jordan's assistant Sarah had arranged to have delivered to him over the weekend. There were crisp button-down shirts, perfectly fitted slacks, and a stylish blazer. It was more than just clothing, it was a costume for his new role, a symbol of his transformation. He chose a light blue shirt and charcoal grey slacks, feeling a mixture of profound nervousness and exhilarating excitement. He looked at his reflection in the small cracked mirror on his bedroom door, and for the first time he saw not just a 19-year-old kid from the East Side trying to get by, but a young professional with a future. His mother Eleanor watched him from the doorway, her face a portrait of pride and love. "You look so handsome, Shijo," she said, her voice thick with emotion. He turned and wrapped her in a gentle hug, being careful of her sore joints. "I'm doing this for us, Mom," he whispered into her hair. "I know you are," she replied, her hand stroking his back. "Now go and make us all proud." His little sister Maya, ever the ball of energy, ran up and gave him a big hug for good luck. "Have a great day at your super cool new job," she said with a wide grin, her missing front tooth making her smile even more endearing. Shijo laughed and promised to tell her all about it when he got home. A car was waiting for him downstairs as promised, a simple black sedan, not a flashy limousine. It was a quiet, professional ride that made him feel respected, not a spectacle. The driver, a kind man named Robert, greeted him by name and held the door open for him. His journey to the office was a surreal experience. He was driven through parts of the city he had only ever seen from a bus window, past impressive glass and steel buildings that housed the corporate headquarters of banks and tech companies, places that had always seemed like they belonged to another world, a world that was not his. The car pulled up to one of these very buildings, a sleek modern structure that served as the regional offices for Michael Jordan's many business ventures. Shijo took a deep breath, smoothed down his shirt and walked inside. The lobby was bright and airy, a stark contrast to the opulent but stuffy atmosphere of the hotel. It was filled with busy people moving with purpose and energy, but there was a friendly, collaborative vibe in the air. He announced himself at the front desk and was immediately greeted by Sarah, the assistant he had spoken with on the phone. She had a warm, genuine smile that instantly put him at ease. "Welcome, Shijo," she said, her voice kind. "We are so glad to have you here." She gave him a comprehensive tour of the office, introducing him to the various teams that made the global enterprise run smoothly. He met the marketing team, who were brainstorming a new campaign for a sneaker launch. He met the finance team, who managed complex global investments. He met the philanthropy team, who were coordinating disaster relief efforts in another country. Shijo shook hands with people whose job titles he had only read about in textbooks, and to his surprise,
everyone was friendly, welcoming, and treated him with respect. They knew his story. Sarah had briefed the core team, and they looked at him not with pity, but with a clear admiration for his character. Finally, Sarah led him to a small but comfortable office with a large window that offered a stunning view of the city. "This will be your workspace," she explained. "You'll be reporting directly to me for the first few months. I'll be your mentor, guiding you through the different aspects of the organization. We want you to learn every facet of what we do from the ground up." Shijo sat down at his new desk and ran his hand over the smooth, polished surface. It felt like a dream. He had his own state-of-the-art computer, his own phone, a stack of pristine notebooks and pens, waiting to be filled with new knowledge. His first task, Sarah explained, was to read through the mission statements and recent annual reports of the company's charitable foundation. He was to familiarize himself with their work, their goals, and their recent projects, so he could begin to assist with community outreach proposals. As Shijo began to read, he was captivated by the sheer scope of their work. They funded educational programs in underserved communities, built safe sports facilities for children in high-crime areas, and provided critical medical aid to people in impoverished countries around the world. He realized with a jolt that he was now a part of this something much bigger than himself, an organization that was actively and effectively making a positive impact on
a global scale. He felt a surge of pride and a profound sense of purpose. He wasn't just an intern pushing paper. He was a part of a team that was changing lives. At lunchtime, Sarah took him to the company cafeteria, a bright modern space where employees from all departments ate together. It wasn't a formal executive dining room. It was a communal space designed to encourage interaction and collaboration. He was sitting at a table with a group of young marketing executives who were eagerly asking him about his perspective on their target audience. When Michael Jordan himself walked in, the room didn't fall into a hushed silence. People just smiled and nodded respectfully as he passed. He moved through the cafeteria like a coach walking among his players, not like a king surveying his subjects. He saw Shijo and walked over to his table, pulling up a chair as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "How's the first day going?" MJ asked, his famous smile, putting everyone at ease. Shijo's heart pounded in his chest. "It's amazing," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm just trying to absorb everything good. Michael replied, "That's the right attitude for your first year." He then turned his attention to the others at the table and started talking about a recent marketing campaign, asking for their opinions and listening intently to their ideas and critiques. Shijo watched in awe. Here was his childhood hero, a global icon, a billionaire businessman, sitting with them like a regular colleague, treating the opinions of junior executives with genuine respect and interest. He realized in that moment that Michael Jordan's greatness wasn't just in his legendary athletic talent, it was in his leadership, his unique ability to connect with people from all walks of life and make them feel seen and valued. After lunch, Michael asked Shijo to walk with him back to his office, a request that made Shijo's stomach do a little flip as they walked down the long corridor. He asked Shijo about his family, his neighborhood, his goals and his dreams. Shijo found himself opening up, telling him about his hope to one day start his own business, a business that would create good jobs in his old neighborhood on the east side. Michael listened intently, nodding in encouragement. When they reached the executive offices, Michael paused outside his large corner office door. "Listen, Shijo," he said, his expression turning serious. "The offer I made you wasn't an act of charity. It was an investment. I saw something in you in that lobby. Your quick thinking, your composure under pressure, your integrity, those are the raw materials of success. I'm giving you an opportunity, a door to walk through, but what you do once you're on the other side is entirely up to you. Work hard, learn everything you can, ask questions and never be afraid to fail or to admit what you don't know. I believe in you, Shijo. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that the words were more powerful than any paycheck or job title. They were a vote of confidence from a man who knew more about winning than anyone alive. They resonated deep within Shijo's soul, extinguishing the last flickering embers of self-doubt. He felt a profound sense of gratitude and an even stronger sense of determination. He would not let this man down. He would work harder than he had ever worked before. He would prove that the investment Michael Jordan had made in him was a wise one. As he walked back to his own desk, he felt a new confidence settling over him like a well-fitting suit. He was no longer just a kid from the East Side who had gotten lucky. He was Shijo Washington, a young man with a powerful mentor, a clear purpose, and an incredible opportunity to build a better future for himself and for his family. He sat down and picked up the report on the charitable foundation, reading with a new and intense focus. He was ready to learn, he was ready to work, and he was ready to prove that a kid who used to carry bags for a living had what it took to succeed in this new and exciting world. His journey had just begun, and for the first time in a very long time, he couldn't wait to see where it would lead him. The news of the terminated contract hit the executive suites of the Grand Lux Hotel Corporation like a Category 5 hurricane. The letter from Michael Jordan's legal team was not a standard business communication, it was a direct and devastating indictment of their corporate culture. The loss of a multi-million-dollar account was a significant blow, but the damage to their brand, a brand built on the very idea of superlative service and luxury, was potentially catastrophic. The CEO, a man named Thomas Sterling, who was accustomed to dealing with spreadsheets and profit margins, was suddenly faced with a full-blown crisis of principles and public relations. He immediately summoned Mr. Henderson, the manager of the Charlotte Grand Lux, to the corporate headquarters in New York City. Mr. Henderson arrived looking pale, nervous, and profoundly defensive. He tried to justify his actions, clutching his well-worn copy of the employee handbook as if it were a sacred text. He cited company policy, the importance of maintaining order, and the unauthorized use of a restricted area, but his excuses sounded pathetically hollow in the face of the monumental financial and reputational fallout his actions had caused. "You fired a minimum wage employee for skillfully and discreetly helping our most famous and respected guest, and in doing so you have cost this company millions of dollars in direct revenue and potentially hundreds of millions in brand damage." Sterling said, his voice dangerously calm and quiet. You have made this entire corporation look foolish, petty and heartless. You have turned a bellhop into a folk hero, and you have turned us into the villains. Mr. Henderson's long and carefully managed career was effectively over before he even left the CEO's office, but the corporation's problems were just beginning. As Michael Jordan had anticipated, news of the story had leaked, likely from a hotel employee who had witnessed the event and had long grown tired of Mr. Henderson's tyrannical management style. The Charlotte Observer ran a front-page story with the explosive headline, "Local Hero Fired for Helping a Legend, a Hero's Reward." The story was a perfect storm of human interest. It had a relatable underdog, a beloved hero, a corporate villain, and a satisfying twist of justice. It went viral within hours, spreading across social media like wildfire. The Grand Lux hotel chain was suddenly inundated with a flood of negative online reviews and angry calls to their customer service lines. People began sharing their own stories of negative experiences with the hotel's rigid policies and uncaring staff. The hashtag Boycott Grand Lux began trending globally, fueled by Michael Jordan's legions of fans and by a general public that was hungry for a story where the little guy wins. The corporation was facing a public relations nightmare of epic proportions, all because one manager had failed to recognize the value of simple human kindness, and another man had refused to let that injustice stand. Back in their small apartment on the east side of Charlotte, the Washington family was largely shielded from the public storm that was raging online. They were focused on their own quiet miracle. Eleanor had her first consultation with the specialist, a kind and brilliant doctor who listened to her story with a compassion she hadn't experienced from a medical professional in years. She laid out a clear and hopeful treatment plan involving new medications and physical therapy that could dramatically improve Eleanor's quality of life. For the first time in a long time, Eleanor felt a genuine belief that she might actually get well. Shijo, meanwhile, was thriving in his new role. He was a sponge for information, a quick learner, a tireless worker, and his natural integrity and quiet humility earned him the respect of his new colleagues. He spent his days absorbing the complexities of the business world and his evenings sharing his newfound knowledge with his family. He was more than just an intern. He was becoming a role model for his little sister Maya, showing her through his own actions that with hard work and good character, anything was truly possible. He was a testament to the fact that your circumstances do not have to define your destiny. One afternoon, about a month into his new job, Michael Jordan called Shijo into his office. "I've been reading your weekly progress reports," he said, gesturing for Shijo to take the seat opposite his desk. "You're doing excellent work. You're asking smart questions, and your insights on the Foundation's latest outreach proposals have been very helpful." "Thank you, sir." Shijo replied, feeling a familiar flush of pride that came with earning his mentor's praise. "I'm just trying to learn as much as I can. I have a new project for you," Michael said, a serious expression on his face. He slid a thick folder across the vast expanse of his desk. "The Grand Lux Corporation has reached out to us. They are in full crisis mode and have requested a meeting. They want to make things right, and they've asked for an opportunity to meet with you." Shijo opened the folder and his eyes widened. Inside was a formal letter of apology addressed to him personally, signed by the CEO of the hotel chain, Thomas Sterling. It was a lengthy and heartfelt letter, admitting their mistake and praising his character. It was followed by a multi-page proposal, a detailed list of things the company was willing to do to earn back the public's trust, and more importantly to them, their biggest corporate account. They offered to rehire him immediately, with full back pay and a promotion to a junior management position. They offered a substantial financial settlement, a 7-figure sum for the emotional distress and hardship they had caused him, and they offered to make a large donation in his name to a charity of his choice. "What should I do?" Shijo asked, looking up at his mentor, his mind reeling from the numbers on the page. "That's entirely for you to decide." "Shijo," Michael said, his expression unreadable, "I will support you no matter what you choose, but I want you to think about this carefully. Think about what the most powerful and meaningful outcome would be, not just for you, but for everyone else who works a job like the one you had." Shijo took the folder home with him that evening, and he and his mother sat at their small kitchen table and discussed it for hours. They weighed the options carefully. The money was tempting. It was a life-changing amount that would guarantee their family's security for the rest of their lives. But as Shijo thought about it, he pictured the faces of his former co-workers, the other bellhops, the housekeepers, the kitchen staff, the thousands of other employees in the hotel chain who worked hard every day under the same rigid and unforgiving policies that had gotten him fired. Just taking the money and walking away felt like a personal victory, but it wouldn't change the underlying system. It wouldn't help anyone else. The next day, Shijo walked into Michael Jordan's office with a new sense of clarity and purpose. "I've made a decision," he said. He pushed the folder back across the desk toward Michael. "I don't want their money. I don't want my old job back. I want them to change." Michael listened intently, a small knowing smile beginning to form at the corners of his mouth. "I want them to use the money they offered me to create a brand new employee training program, a program that teaches empathy and empowers every employee, from the cleaning staff to the general managers, to make decisions that are in the best interest of the guests, even if it means bending a rule now and then. I want them to create a permanent employee relief fund, so that if someone is unfairly terminated in the future, they have a financial safety net to support their family while they look for new work. And I want them to establish a new annual award named the Washington Integrity Award that publicly recognizes an employee at any level who has gone above and beyond to do the right thing for a guest or a colleague." Shijo finished, his voice steady and strong. He had discovered his own power, and it wasn't in taking a payout, it was in creating lasting systemic change. A slow, wide smile spread across Michael Jordan's face. He had known when he first met Shijo in that lobby that the young man had potential. But this was more than he could have ever hoped for. He had not just given Shijo a job, he had given him a platform, and Shijo was using that platform not to enrich himself, but to lift up thousands of others. "That is an excellent proposal," Michael said, his voice filled with pride. "I will arrange the meeting with Mr. Sterling. You will present this to the CEO yourself. You've more than earned that right." The changes at the Grand Lux Hotel Corporation were not superficial cosmetic fixes, they were deep and structural. The company took Shijo Washington's proposals to heart and began a complete and genuine overhaul of their corporate culture. They brought in leading experts in hospitality and human resources to develop a revolutionary new training program they called the Service Integrity Initiative. It focused on employee empowerment, active listening, and creative customer-centric problem-solving. The Washington Integrity Award was established with a significant cash prize, a paid vacation, and a grand annual ceremony that celebrated employees who demonstrated the kind of exceptional character that Shijo had shown. The story of Shijo Washington became a legendary case study within the company, a powerful and constant reminder that their most valuable assets were not their marble lobbies or their crystal chandeliers, but their people, their dedicated and hard-working staff. Shijo himself, of course, never returned to work at the hotel. His new path was far too exciting and full of promise. He excelled in his role within Michael Jordan's organization, his quiet intelligence, his natural empathy, and his unwavering integrity, making him an increasingly valuable member of the team. He became deeply involved in the charitable foundation, discovering he had a passion for philanthropy and a natural talent for identifying and supporting community projects in his own neighborhood and beyond. He had a unique ability for connecting with people, understanding their needs and finding practical, sustainable solutions. He was no longer just the recipient of help. He was an active and effective agent of change, creating opportunities for others, just as a life-changing opportunity had been created for him. His mother Eleanor's health improved dramatically. With the cutting-edge care she received from the top specialists, she was able to manage her condition effectively. The constant pain subsided and her mobility increased. She was able to leave the house more often, to watch Maya's soccer games, to take walks in the park, and even to volunteer at the local community center, helping to read to young children. The dark cloud of worry that had hung over their family for so very long was replaced by a sense of security, stability, and profound hope. The Washington Integrity Scholarship had its first recipient, a brilliant and determined young woman who had started a peer tutoring program for struggling students at her high school. At the award ceremony, Michael Jordan was the keynote speaker, but he insisted that Shijo be the one to stand on stage and present the scholarship check to the deserving student. As Shijo stood at the podium in his old high school auditorium, looking out at the faces of hundreds of students who were just like he had been only a year before, he felt a profound sense of a full circle moment. He was no longer the boy in the audience dreaming of a future. He was the man on the stage, helping to make a future possible for someone else. "I'm not anyone special," he told the students, his voice clear and confident. "I just tried to do the right thing when I thought no one important was watching, and it turned out someone was." The lesson isn't to hope that a famous person will notice you. The lesson is to do the right thing even when you're sure no one is watching, because that's when your character is truly defined. Character is what you do in the dark when you think you're all alone. His words, spoken from a place of deep experience, resonated powerfully with the students and the community. His story had become more than just a feel-good news item. It had evolved into an inspirational fable, a modern parable about the power of kindness, the importance of integrity, and the unexpected ways that a single good deed can ripple outward, changing the world in ways you can never imagine. Michael Jordan often checked in with Shijo, not as a boss monitoring an employee, but as a true mentor, guiding a protege. He saw in Shijo a reflection of his own younger self, a fierce competitive drive to succeed against the odds, and a deep-seated desire to make a positive and lasting impact on the world. He knew that his investment in the young man was yielding returns far greater than any financial profit could ever provide. One sunny afternoon, he visited the Washington's apartment again, this time not as a stranger offering help, but as a welcome and cherished friend. He sat in their small, comfortable living room, drinking the sweet iced tea that Eleanor had made, and listened as Shijo talked excitedly about a new community garden project he was helping to organize for a local retirement home. Maya proudly showed him her report card, all A's, and told him with certainty that she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up so she could help people just like the doctors had helped her mum. The home was filled with laughter and light, a stark and beautiful contrast to the worried silence he had first encountered there so many months ago. As he was leaving, Shijo walked him to his car. "Thank you again," he said, his voice filled with an emotion that needed no explanation for everything. "I'll never be able to repay you for what you've done for my family." Michael put a firm and fatherly hand on his shoulder. "You already have, Shijo," he replied. "You've paid it forward 100 times over by helping others, by being a role model for your sister and for thousands of kids in this city, and by reminding an old athlete what really matters in life. That's a bigger gift than you can possibly imagine." He got into his car and drove away, feeling a sense of deep and lasting contentment. He had come to his hometown seeking a connection to his past, a quiet moment of reflection. But he had found something far more valuable and enduring, a connection to the future. He had discovered that his legacy would not be defined solely by championship rings or scoring records. It would also be defined by the lives he had touched off the court, by the opportunities he had created, and by the quiet moments when he had used his immense platform to stand up for the Shijo Washingtons of the world, the countless young people with immense potential who just needed someone to believe in them and to open a door to a brighter future. He could see clearly now. The story of Shijo Washington and the celebrated basketball player Michael Jordan became a quiet legend in the city of Charlotte, a testament to the idea that true greatness is measured not by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you inspire and enable in others. Shijo continued to grow and flourish within Michael Jordan's organization. His natural leadership skills, his compassionate heart, and his sharp business acumen made him an invaluable asset. He eventually went to college at night, supported by his mentor's encouragement and a flexible work schedule, earning the business degree he had always dreamed of, all while continuing to work and support his family. He never lost the humility and integrity that had first caught Michael Jordan's eye, even as he ascended the corporate ladder. He became a living, breathing example of the principles the Washington Integrity Scholarship was founded on, proving to everyone he met that character is the true and unshakable foundation of lasting success. He spearheaded new initiatives within the foundation, focusing on creating mentorship programs that paired successful professionals with at-risk youth from neighborhoods just like his. He knew from personal experience that a guiding hand and a powerful role model could make all the difference in a young person's life. Michael Jordan's decision to stand up for Shijo had a ripple effect that he never could have fully anticipated. Other athletes and public figures heard the story and were inspired to look for their own opportunities to use their platforms to support everyday people in their communities. The incident sparked a national conversation in business schools and boardrooms about corporate responsibility and the critical importance of treating all employees from the executive suite to the loading dock with dignity and respect. The Grand Lux hotel chain, after fully implementing the transformative changes Shijo had proposed, saw a remarkable and sustained turnaround. Their employee morale soared, leading to lower turnover and a higher quality of service. Customer satisfaction ratings reached all-time highs. They became known in the industry not just for their luxury amenities, but for their heart. The Washington Integrity Award became one of the most prestigious and sought-after internal honors within the company, a powerful symbol of their renewed and genuine commitment to their people. Years later, Michael Jordan was being interviewed for a major television documentary about his life and career. The acclaimed director asked him a final question. After all the games, all the championships, all the accolades of all your accomplishments, what are you most proud of? The camera zoomed in on his face, expecting him to talk about the buzzer-beating shot against the Jazz or his first championship ring with the Bulls. But Michael thought for a moment, not of the roaring crowds or the flash of cameras, but of a small, clean apartment on the east side of Charlotte and the quiet dignity of a family facing hardship with unbreakable courage. "I'm proud of the wins, of course," he said, his voice softer, now more reflective. "But the thing I'm most proud of is a young man named Shijo Washington. He was a bellhop who taught me that the most powerful thing you can do with your life is not just to succeed, but to use your success to lift others up." He's a business leader and a philanthropist, now the executive director of my foundation, and a better man than I could ever hope to be. My investment in him was the single greatest play I ever made. The story wasn't just about a famous athlete helping a young man. It was about how the young man, in his own quiet and unassuming way, had helped the famous athlete remember the core values that had made him great in the first place: hard work, perseverance, a refusal to accept injustice, and a deep belief in the potential of people to do good in the world. It was a powerful reminder that heroes don't always wear jerseys, and they don't always make the headlines. Sometimes they wear a simple bellhop uniform and carry the weight of their family on their young shoulders with grace, courage, and an integrity that can inspire the entire world. And sometimes all they need is for one person to see their true character and give them a chance to shine. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We'd love to know where you're listening from, so leave a comment below sharing your location and what part of Michael and Shijo's incredible journey moved you the most for another inspiring story that will move you just as much. Click the video appearing on your screen right now. You won't want to miss it.